स्टार्ट करो।
Good morning, students. I am Niranjan Das, Acharya, Saraswati Shishu Vidya Mandir, Kabirpur, Jaspur. Welcome you to the English class. Well, children, I hope you are all well and healthy at home. Today, let's discuss on a very important and a very interesting poem of class 10th. The title of the poem is The Solitary Reaper. You know, students, Solitary Reaper is, I think, perhaps the finest lyrical poem of the famous poet Wordsworth. We know William Wordsworth was a worshipper of nature, and he describes the common and ordinary people in their ordinary and their common language. And here is a poem for you, students. It's a very fine piece of poem. That's the Solitary Reaper. You know, students, Wordsworth was, this poem particularly was inspired when Wordsworth made a trip to Scotland along with his sister Dorothy Wordsworth in 1803. And actually this poem was written in 1805 November and it was published in 1807. So the poem that follows is about a lone Scottish girl. The poet comes across while passing through the high regions of Scotland, and the poet finds the girl all alone in the field. And the girl was busy making the harvest, and at the same time she was producing a very sweet and melodious song. And the song was so enchanting, so fascinating, that the poet finds himself spellbound and mesmerized. You know, students, mesmerized means he was just सम्मोहित हो गए, and spellbound means मंत्रमुग्ध. Scottish girl संगीत इति मंत्रमुग्ध कर एवं इति स्वीट थिला जे the poet Wordsworth finds himself mesmerized, and that is the real theme of the poem. Is a thing of beauty is joy forever. That is the scenic beauty or a picturesque beauty, and the sweet voice or song of a singer, that it keeps or it leaves an everlasting impact upon us, you know. And that's the real theme of the poem. The poet Wordsworth was so haunted, so fascinated by the Scottish girl's song, that he feels as if the girl's song he carried in his heart, in his soul forever. It was the girl's song had an everlasting impact upon his soul. So now, children, let's go through the poem and let's come to the first stanza of the poem. Behold her singly in the field, yon solitary highland lass, reaping and singing by herself, stop here or gently pass. Students, the very first stanza The poem begins. The poet says, behold. Behold, behold means have a look. देखो, देखिबा. To have a look. Singly in the field. Her refers to the Scottish girl, the Highland lass. The poet, while passing through the high regions of Scotland, he comes across a lone Scottish girl who was busy doing the harvest in the field, and at the very same time she was producing a very sweet song in a very sweet voice. So the poet asks the travelers. Who does the poet ask to behold? To the co-travelers who are passing through the high regions of Scotland. And the poet says, behold her singing in the field. She's singing in the field. Yon solitary highland lass. Yon means over there. There. Solitary highland lass. Highland, students, highland here refers to the high regions or hilly areas, that is mountain areas of Scotland. So the poet was passing through. He was passing through these Scottish hilly areas, high regions, and while traveling through the hilly areas, the poet finds a solitary girl, Scottish girl who was singing very sweetly in the field, reaping and singing by herself. Stop here or gently pass. So the poet asks the travelers to have a look, to listen carefully, and he finds the girl reaping and singing. She was reaping, cutting grains, and at the very same time she was singing a very melodious song. And the poet she was so much haunted. The poet was so much fascinated by the girl's song that he did not wish even in any interpretation of the girl's song. So he urged the travelers to stop there, either stop or very smoothly, very gently pass through that spot so that the girls would not be disturbed. That means the poet, he was so much fascinated, he was so much haunted by the girl's song that he did not want to be disturbed. He did not want that the girl should not be disturbed and her singing should not be disturbed. Okay, students, I think you must have understood the very first stanza. And the poet's application, the poet's interest in listening the girl's song was so high that he asked the travelers, the passers-by, to pass particularly that spot very smoothly or very gently without making any disturbance, without making any noise, so that the girl would not be disturbed, and he would listen the girl's song to his heart content. So this is all about the very first stanza. Then come to the second stanza. Alone she cuts and binds the grain and sings a melancholy strain. Oh, listen, for the veil profound is overflowing with the sound. Children, the poet insists on the solitudeness of the girl. And again in the very first line of the second stanza, the poet says, alone she cuts and binds the grain. The girl was alone. She was alone. There is nobody else beside her. She was cutting and binding the grain. She was filing the crops herself. She was reaping, she was cutting, binding, and piling the crops by herself. She was all alone. There was nobody else beside her in that field and sings a melancholy strain. What is, students, what is melancholy strain? Here melancholy strain means a very tragic song, sad song. The poet feels somewhat tragicness, some tragic elements, some sad elements in the girl's song. So listen for the vale profound. Vale, the vale refers to the entire valley, the entire valley, the deep valley. Profound. Profound means uh, very great amount, that is profound. ଗଭୀର ଭାବରେ ନିବିଡ଼ ଅତି ସମ୍ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଗଭୀର ସେ ଯେଉଁ ଉପତ୍ୟକାଟି ସମ୍ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଭାବରେ ସେ ଝିଅଟିର ସଙ୍ଗୀତରେ କ'ଣ ହେଉଥିଲା ନା ମୁଖରିତ ହେଉଥିଲା, ପ୍ରତିଧ୍ୱନିତ ହେଉଥିଲା. ସୋ ଓ ଲିସନ୍, ଦ ପୋଏଟ୍ ଆସ୍କ ଦ ଟ୍ରାଭେଲର୍ସ, ଓ ଲିସନ୍, because for means because the entire valley, the whole valley is echoed with the melodious voice of the girl's song, and it is overflowing with the song. The entire valley, the whole valley, the deep valley is overflowing with the sweet song, the sweet voice, the melodious voice of this Scottish girl. So this is all about the second stanza. And students, the third stanza, you shall see how Wordsworth is so much high in praise for the girl's song. So in the first stanza, the poet compares the girl's song with a very sweet singing bird, that is the nightingale bird. Nightingale. So in the third stanza, the poet says, "No nightingale did ever chant more welcome notes to weary winds of travelers in some shady hunt among Arabian scenes." Students, nightingale is a very sweet singing bird. It sings so melodiously, so nicely, in a very sweet voice, sweet tone. But the poet says, no nightingale did ever chant. Chant means sang. According to the poet's opinion, the Scottish girl song was so nice, so sweet, so melodious that even a very sweet singing word nightingale cannot sing so nicely or so beautifully or so melodiously like that of the Scottish girl. So no nightingale did ever chant more welcome notes. Here, children, what do you mean by welcome notes? Let's discuss on this point, particularly this line, more welcome notes, welcome songs, welcoming songs to weary winds. Weary means very tired, very disgusted, and bands, group of people. Students walking or traveling through a desert, the dead desert, is really very tiring and very painful, very difficult journey actually. So among the Arabian deserts, Arabian, Arab marubhumi manangare, it takes a traveler months time. Student, it takes a traveler to a month's time to cross a desert. So do you imagine how painful it is? So then, particularly among the Arabian deserts, see, the nightingale bird sings melodiously. That is, the poet says, that is a welcoming song. That they welcome. Who does the nightingale welcome? For whom does the nightingale bird sing welcoming songs? For the tired travelers who pass or who travel through the Arabian deserts, and they are very much worried, they were very much tired, and the nightingale bird sings in some shady haunt, Steady hunt, no students. In the deserts, in some places, there is a place with water and trees where the tired travelers, get some rest and relaxation. Particularly in the steady haunts, the nightingale bird sings welcome songs. That means the tired travelers, they come to know that they have not to they have not to travel more distance in the dead desert. That means they think themselves they have already reached the end of the dead desert, and they will get some relaxation and a rest in the shady haunts. Particularly in this spot, shady haunts, the nightingale birds sings welcome songs, and they listening to the nightingale's sweet song. The tired travelers get some relaxation, and they come to know that they have reached the end of the dead desert. Okay, students, this is all about the third stanza. Let's see whether the poet again compares the Scottish girl song with any other singer. Yes, you are right, students. In the very fourth stanza, the poet again compares the sweet voice of the Scottish girl with that of the cuckoo bird. You know, the cuckoo, you have already listened to heard the sweet song of cuckoo bird, and a voice. Let's come to the fourth stanza. A voice so thrilling never was heard. In spring time from the cuckoo bird, breaking the silence of the seas among the farthest Hebrides. A voice so thrilling voice. Whose voice is thrilling? The poet tells about. That is the voice of this cuckoo. The cuckoo's voice, the cuckoo's sweet song, actually thrilling. It gives excitement, interest, and pleasure to the listeners. But the poet says, no, a voice so thrilling never was heard from the cuckoo bird. The poet had never heard such a melodious, such a sweet voice that the Scottish girl is singing from the cuckoo bird. That means the cuckoo at its best cannot sing so melodiously, so nicely, or so beautifully like that of the Scottish girl. Okay, students, cuckoo कोइलीर इति सुंदर संगीत पंचम सुर गाए कोइली पुथी, किंतु वर्ड्सवर्थ को मतरे स्कॉटिश गर्ल जो सुंदर भाव गीत गाँची कोइली शत चेष्टा कले भी ए भली सुंदर गीत केबे गाई परिबो नाही. सो voice so thrilling never was heard from in spring time. The cuckoo sings melodiously, sweetly, particularly in spring season. During spring, we more often hear the sweet song of cuckoo bird. From the cuckoo bird, breaking the silence of the seas among the farthest Hebrides. Very friends, I don't know what is farthest Hebrides. Farthest, far, farther, farthest. The compared superlative degree form of far. And here farthest Hebrides particularly refers to the remote group of islands that is from northwest of Scotland. स्कॉटलैंड रो उत्तर पश्चिम को बहुत सुदूर रे कौन अच्छी ग्रुप ऑफ आइलैंड्स. देयर आर as many as 500 islands there. That is the remote group of islands from northwest of but Scotland. And among these islands, the cuckoo sings so beautifully, particularly in spring season. And its voice is so thrilling, so enchanting, so fascinating. But the poet says, no, Kuko doubtlessly sings with his thrilling voice. Its voice is no doubt thrilling, but it's not so thrilling like that of the Scottish girl's voice. So, what a comparison you see, students, right? So, here the third and fourth stanza, the poet compares the Scottish girl's song with two very sweet singing birds, that is nightingale and cuckoo. So then, friends, to understand about the poet's mood. The poet was actually in a very romantic mood, and he appreciated the Scottish scale song so high that his was very high in his praise. In his appreciation for the Scottish girl song. The Scottish girl was alone in the field, and she was busy making the harvest, and at the very same time singing melodiously. And she was singing so melodiously that, so nicely and so beautiful that even a nightingale and cuckoo can sing so beautifully. So then, students, I think you must have understood the fourth and third stanza, and I think this is very beautiful comparison. That is the poet, the Wordsworth is a poet of nature. He's a romantic poet, and nature is the soul of his description, of his poems. And according to him, poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings arising from our emotions recollected in tranquility. This is the opinion, this is the mood of the great poet, that is William Wordsworth. Okay, students, then come to the fifth stanza. The poet listens and listens very with a concentration. He is really haunted, and then the poet begins to guess what type of the song the girls is singing. So in the fifth stanza, the poet asks a question: will no one tell me what she sings? Perhaps the plaintive numbers flow for old unhappy far off things and battles longing. In the fifth stanza, the poet begins to guess what type of the song the girl is singing, and he asks a question: will no one tell me? Will no one tell? Can anyone tell what type of song the girl is singing? Because why? This particular line indicates that the poet was really confused. He can't understand the theme of the girl's song. So he asks the travelers, will no one tell me? କେହି ଜଣେ ମୋତେ କହିପାରିବ କି ସେ ଝିଅଟିର ଗୀତର ମର୍ମ କ'ଣ, ତା ଭାଷା କ'ଣ କି ପ୍ରକାର ସେ ଗୀତ ଗାଉଛି? But the poet gets no answer. Nobody answers him. The poet fails to understand. The poet fails to understand the voice of the language of the Scottish girl song, because the poet is not familiar with the girl's language. The Scottish girl who is singing in her local language, that is Scottish language, and the poet is not familiar with the Scottish language. That's why he is confused. He fails to understand what the type of the song the girl is singing. So then he tries to guess. He asks the travelers, will no one tell me what she sings? So finding no answer, getting no answer, the poet starts to guess what may be the theme of this song. Perhaps the plaintive numbers flow. Plaintive numbers, that is plaintive numbers means a sad song. And the second stanza, the poet used melancholy song. It's sad song. And the fifth stanza, the poet again says the melancholy strain, that is plaintive numbers flow. Plaintive numbers, right friends, plaintive numbers is a sad music, tragic song. The girl is doubtlessly singing a tragic and a very sad song, and there is some elements of sadness in her and sorrows in her girls in her song, tragic elements, and the poet, but the poet fails to understand. But if the poet, observing the girl's mood, is sure that the girl is doubtlessly singing a melancholy strain, a tragic song, a sad song. But he fails to understand her language. Then he asks to travelers whether anyone can tell me him what type of song she is singing. But getting no answer, the poet starts to guess. Perhaps this sad song may be for old unhappy far off things and battles long ago. Old unhappy days in the particularly in Scotland, a number of battles were fought in the past, and students, battles, wars brings only destruction, loss of lives and wealth. So it causes only pain, suffering, unhappiness, right? So then the poet starts to guess the girl's song may be about the unhappy days, sadful, sorrowful days in the past when a number of battles were fought and that caused is lot of loss of lives and wealth and caused unhappiness and sorrows and sufferings. The poet guesses that maybe girl song is the girl is singing about the past and unhappy days of Scotland when a long years ago when a numbers of battles were fought and that caused lot of sufferings, pains and tragedy. And again, students, the next stanza, the poet again tries to guess what may be the theme of the girl's song. Or is it some more ambulle, familiar matter of today, some natural sorrow, loss or pain that has been and maybe again? Right, friends, you see, in the fifth stanza, the poet guesses that perhaps the girl is singing about the unhappy and sorrowful days of the past and the sorrows caused by a number of battles. Again in the next stanza, the poet again guesses that perhaps it may be some more ambulle. Ambulle means ordinary song. Ambulle means ordinary song, the song of our ordinary life, our common life, our day-to-day life, our everyday life.
हाँ करो.
So, well students, in the sixth stanza, the poet goes on guessing. Maybe the theme of the girl's song is about to the sorrows and suffering and pains we face in our everyday life. So he says, or is it some more ambulle, familiar matter of today. Students, what is familiar matter? Regarding families, in our families, we face many sorrows, sufferings, and that unhappiness due to some regarding our family matters. And a matter of today, that is a very common, ordinary, and our everyday life that people face, and some natural sorrow, loss or pain. Natural sorrow, what is today's natural sorrow means? The sorrows that come naturally, that come spontaneously, that come without any notice in our everyday life. That is natural sorrow. I think the sorrow or unhappiness caused by maybe due to loss of any valuable thing or life. In our everyday life, we natural sorrow that come spontaneously in our we face in our day-to-day life. So the then poet again goes on guessing that maybe the girl song, maybe the girl is singing about the unhappiness or sorrows and sufferings of our day-to-day life, everyday life, the ordinary life that has been, or maybe again, and maybe again that has been Gudavi Achi, maybe again may come in future. Who knows? कि जाने आदि काली जी गोटे परिवार पुणी किसी अनहापिनेस न आसो दुख जंत्रणा न आसो कि कहीपर से कथा. सो दिस इज आम दैनन्दिन जीवन में आम जो साधारण माने स्वाभाविक भाव में आम जो दुख कष्ट जंत्रणा भोगती जोटा को आमको दुख दे था जंत्रणा दे था मे बी बोधे स्कटिश झीटी से विषय गीत हो पाए. बट पोएट इज नॉट sure. Why? The poet can't understand the her language. He is not actually familiar with the Scottish language. The girl is singing in her local language. Well, students, the poet Wordsworth goes on guessing, and in the 7th stanza he says, whatever the theme may be, whatever the theme, the maiden sang, as if her song could have no ending. I saw her singing at our boat and over the city bending. In the 7th stanza, the poet can't reach on any conclusion. It's not sure what is actual theme of the Scottish girl's song, and then he thinks himself, says whatever the theme may be, theme संगीतर मर्म तेरिक जहाँ होना कहीं तो maiden sang जहाँ maiden mean here maiden refers to is replaced for the Scottish girl. Maiden means unmarried girl, Scottish girl. As if her song could have no ending. Whatever the theme may be, that doesn't matter. कौन से तार गीतर मर्म कौन तार कौन सेटा किसी नहीं किंतु सते जेमिति से तार संगीतर कौन शेष नहीं. So it seems to the poet. The poet feels as if the Scottish girl's sweet voice, sweet song has no ending. Could have no ending. Or so he no pare. Could have no ending. And she was singing endlessly. I saw her singing at war. The girl was singing, but making the harvest. She was busy in making the harvest, but she was singing continuously, endlessly, and it seemed to the poet that as if the girl's song would have no ending. He was so haunted, she was so fascinated by the girl's song, right? And over the sickle, an instrument which is used for cutting crops, grains. Scottish girl that is very फसल काटुची फसल को विड़ा करुची बांधुची एवं से एका समय कौन करुची ना सुंदर भाव गीत गाई चलती जो गीतर वर्ड्सवर्थ भाव सते जमी शेष ना आ गीतर वर्ड्सवर्थ निजे कौन सम्मोहित होती मेस्मराइज सम्मोहित होती स्पेल बाउंड he finds himself spell bound मंत्रमुग्ध ସଙ୍ଗୀତରେ। Final stanza. Students, I listened motionless and still. The final stanza. And as I mounted up the hill, the music in my heart I bore. Long after it was heard no more. The poet listened motionlessly and still, the poet could not even proceed a step forward. Why? He was so spellbound. He was so fascinated. He was haunted by the girl's song. So he stood there motionlessly, unmoved, without any movement. The poet could not make any further movement. He stopped there like a statue, and his feet even could not proceed further. He was so fascinated by the girl's song. And as I mounted up the hill, but when? As means when? The poet mounted up the hill. It was a hill. He was passing through the hilly or mountain regions of Scotland, right? So when he again made his journey, resumed his journey, and he climbed higher and higher up the hill, the poet felt as if he bore the girl's song in his heart. That means the girl's song, he left the place. He left the spot where the girl is singing because he had to go. But the poet says the girl's song had an everlasting impact on my soul. ସତେ ଯେମିତି ଏ ସଙ୍ଗୀତ ସେ ଝିଅଟିର ସଙ୍ଗୀତ ଯେମିତି ମୋ ହୃଦୟରେ ମୁଁ କ'ଣ କରିନେଇଥିଲି, ଧାରଣ କରିନେଇଥିଲି, ବହି ମାନେ ନେଇଯାଇଥିଲି। ଅବଶ୍ୟ ତା ଗୀତର ତା ସ୍ୱରଟା ଶୁଣିପାରୁନଥିଲି ମୁଁ, ଯେତେବେଳେ ମୁଁ ଅଧିକ ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ପାହାଡ଼କୁ ଚଢ଼ି ଚଢ଼ି ଗଲି ଆଗକୁ, କିନ୍ତୁ ମୋତେ ଲାଗୁଥିଲା ସତେ ଯେମିତି ସେ ଝିଅର ସଙ୍ଗୀତ ସବୁବେଳେ ମୋ ହୃଦୟରେ ଯେମିତି କ'ଣ ହେଉଛି ନା ପ୍ରତିଧ୍ୱନିତ ହେଉଛି, ଯେମିତି ମୋ ହୃଦୟ ଭିତରେ ସବୁଦିନ ପାଇଁ ସାହିତ୍ୟିକ ମୁଁ ନେଇଯାଇଛି। So this is the mood, this is the feelings of the Wordsworth. So the music in my heart I bore, I carried in my heart, and it imprinted. The music was imprinted in his heart, his soul, and long after it was heard no more. And long after some long hours, the poet could hear his song no more. That means the poet could not hear the girl's song any longer as he climbed high or off the mountain. So students, I think you all must have understood the poem well, and Wordsworth, this is the Wordsworth poem, and words really fail to describe his feelings, his mood, and his poetic work. So then, you all friends, I think you must have understood, and I am very much glad and happy that you have participated with me in my class. So very much thank you for you all. It's over today. Bye.